I watched Trump's speech today in Iowa to kick off America 250 so you don't have to, and here's my overview. We'll start with the craziest thing he said, which is that we're going to have a UFC fight on White House grounds. Coming in at a close second to that was he said that only 18 out of every 10,000 people don't have autism. So 9,982 out of every 10,000 people have autism. And it's artificially created, he said, and they're going to get to the bottom of it. He spoke for about an hour and he only mentioned Biden twice, so that is an improvement, although I will say that he did say fake news 7 times, which I will remind you again. Fake news is purely a fascist idea. This has been well documented for decades. He reiterated that somehow there were 0 border crossings last month, and then also said that that number is made up, his term made up, by radical left Democrats. He said gas prices are way down, which again is not true. They're about exactly where they were when he took office, but he said that we also cured inflation. And then he says that there's going to be no more estate tax if you love your children, but if you don't love your children, you can just forget about that because it doesn't matter. He said Dems wouldn't vote for the big beautiful bill purely because they hate Trump, but he says that's totally fine because he hates them too, reiterates that, and then says that the big beautiful bill is going to kick immigrants off of Medicaid, which I will remind you again, undocumented migrants are not receiving any federal assistance. It is not a thing. How would they if you don't know they're there? He said Iran phoned him in advance of their strikes on our military base in Qatar, and that he said, go for it. And then they planned out a time and said, are you ready? And he said, we're ready. Literally, he said that he agreed to American bases in foreign countries being bombed. He was fine with it. He agreed to it. He said that Biden took away air traffic control, and that's what caused that plane to hit the helicopter over D.C. while he was president. 2 days ago, he said the number was 88 billion, but today he said we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars from tariffs, which I will remind you is your money. A tariff is a tax on an imported good paid by the importer that is then passed down to you, the American consumer. He said we gained 830,000 jobs last month, even though he posted himself earlier today that we gained 145,000 jobs last month. To expand on his slavery statement from Alligator Auschwitz, he said that we're just going to trust farmers if they say that these people are not bad, and they're not going to deport anyone who's here illegally who a farmer says they should be here. And then he says that, but if the farmers are bad at that, maybe we'll just deport the farmers and leave the immigrants. And then he says the fake news is going to say that I actually meant that, even though I was just being sarcastic. You can't be sarcastic. So he caught himself in his stupidity, at least. So maybe some props there. He at one point said we're doing way good. And then he says that he really likes seriously radically right people. You know, like white supremacists. He really likes them. He said so. He said every single police department in the country had record recruitment numbers since he went into office. Every single one. He went on a long rant about how he got the FIFA World Cup and how he got the Olympics. I will remind you that for the Olympics, cities individually put out their own bids, and then the International Olympic Committee is the one who figures out where they're going to pick. And then regarding FIFA, he said he got the great soccer, that whole deal. He couldn't remember it was the FIFA World Cup. He said that Democrats are criminals and thugs for going after him legally, even though he was found guilty by a jury of his own peers. And then he goes on a long rant about renaming Fort Bragg because we won a bunch of wars from Fort Bragg, is what he kept saying. He twice says that the military parade in D.C. went down 5th Avenue. I grew up in Alexandria. There is no 5th Avenue in D.C. That's in New York. You know where he famously said that he could shoot someone on the street on 5th Avenue and no one would change their mind about him? Well, he thinks that's in D.C. now, or he doesn't know where the parade was, or he doesn't know where he lives, or whatever. But he definitely doesn't know D.C. He said that twice, I promise you. Speaking about the parade, he said that climate change is not real because they couldn't predict the weather for the parade. That is why climate change is not real. In addition to that, he said that if the ocean levels rise, you're just going to have more beachfront property. I will remind you that there's a limited amount of land. And so if the ocean rises and covers some of that land, then you will have less property. You will have less actual oceanfront property if the water rises and makes the landmass on which it sits smaller. Right? That's just common sense, right? He wants to talk about common sense. He describes RFK Jr. as a little bit different, which I actually agree with him on that one. And then he says that New York City is trying to elect a communist and that we will never have a communist in this country, even in New York City. So he's got some plans. And to wrap it all up, he claims again that there was a nationwide EV mandate, which was not a thing. There was an EV mandate in California to try and get all new cars being sold by 2030 to be electric vehicles. He claims that was nationwide, a claim that he's made the entire time he ran for president, and then even after that, going so far as to sign a executive order that said that we're getting rid of something that did not exist. And then he claimed again that hydrogen cards explode, and that when they explode people's bodies, you never find them because their bodies get blown 5 blocks away. Anyways, if you enjoyed any of that or hated the entire thing, feel free to follow me. If you're not, do like, share, comment. Those things help and allow me to do longer content like this. Thanks.